Hey, this is Victor Antonio for the Victor Report today. Today we're going to talk about how do you prep yourself. In other words, how do you prep yourself so you can sell your product or service to the best of your abilities? Now, you ever watch like Law and Order or some of those law shows? And there's always a part where, somebody's going to take a stand and the prosecution may say, their attorneys may say, hey, we need to prep you before you take the stand. In other words, we need to prep you to be able to answer those tough questions that you're going to be asked on the stand. Now, selling is no different. We need to prep ourselves because our clients are going to ask us tough questions. Whether we're selling a product or service, they're going to ask us tough questions. So how do you prep yourself? Well, here are three questions I want you to ask yourself. And if you can answer these three questions, you really will be able to prep yourself in such a way that you'll be able to talk to your customers in a very forthright way, but with conviction and be convincing. First question you're going to ask yourself is, what would motivate me to buy my product or service? What would motivate me to buy my product or service? Now, these are reasons why you would buy. So go ahead and list those out. What would motivate me to buy my product or service? List those out. And you're going to list out the benefits of what you have to offer. Great. Second question, a little tougher. What would dissuade me from buying my own product or service? What would dissuade me from buying my own product or service? Go ahead and write that list out. These are reasons people would object to buying your product or service. Now, as you're listing those out, you're going to start thinking about, what would I say? Here are the reasons why I wouldn't buy my own product. Then now mentally you have to say, well, what would you say? If a customer said that to you, here's why I won't buy your product, what would you say? So by studying the objections, that's the second question I just asked, what would dissuade me from buying my product or service? You're going to come up with a list of objections. These objections, you're now going to ask yourself, how would I answer those? And then practice those answers. The last one, very similar to objections, but this is called the stall tactics. Most people don't want to buy now. So ask yourself, what would prevent me from buying my product or service now? See, that's a stall tactic customers will use. Well, maybe now's not a good time. Well, let me think about it. That's a stall. So you got to ask yourself, what would persuade me or dissuade me from buying my product or service now? And when you ask yourself that question, what you're really doing is answering in your head, what would I say to convince a customer to buy now? So let's go through the three questions that you will use to prep yourself to become a better salesperson. The first one is, what would motivate me to buy my product or service, right? Get that list out. Those are usually the benefits and the gains and the advantages of buying your product or service. Second, what would dissuade me from buying my product or service? What would be the objections? What would be reasons why I wouldn't buy my own product or service? List those objections out and then ask yourself, what would I say during the conversation with the client to overcome those objections? Last but not least, the stall tactics when they say, I don't want to buy now. So ask yourself, what would prevent me from buying my product now? And then ask yourself, okay, here's what my customer might say. Now's not a good time. Let me think about it. When your customer has those objections, what would you say? How would you respond? See, by understanding these three questions and how you would respond, what would you say? How would you respond? You have now prepped yourself to meet with the client. And if you do this well enough, you become very good at it, become very fluid in what you're talking about and how you're responding to some of these objections. So again, the best way to prep yourself is to really ask yourself three tough questions. What would motivate me? What would dissuade me? And what would prevent me from buying it now? Try these three questions before you do your next sales pitch and let me know how it goes. This is Victor Antonio with the Victor Report. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.